Just Onside. I'm joined, as always, by Ois. How are you, Ois?
I'm doing good, thank you. Are you doing good?
And the reason why I said it was special is, as you can see in one of the boxes, the great return of the man himself, Mr. Moggy. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much, Ayub, for that intro. I'm well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me back on.
Well, in terms of inviting, we were going to have you on Monday, but you had a few issues. I think it was the number 59 to Preston. I think so. We had to reschedule. But my goodness me, it's turned out all right that we rescheduled, because what a game! What a cracking game! And to be honest, really, let's get straight at it. I mean, we were going to talk about all things Spurs, but really, I think we have to start with the game and what your thoughts on the game were, because it was one of the most dramatic games I think the Premier League has ever seen. So take it away, Moggy.
Yeah, as you said, it's been one of the most dramatic games the Premier League have seen in recent times. A lot more so for, a lot of the VAR and how many goals were scored and not scored and sending offs. But funny you should say that, because anyone that I spoke to during the day or leading up to it, I said to them that this fixture, the Chelsea-Tottenham fixture, for me is the fixture that I look out for, and is the one, because I know I'm a Tottenham fan, and you'd like to think that it's the Arsenal game that's, it is, that's the derby, and I don't like losing to Arsenal, but for some reason the Chelsea games just holds that little bit more of a, an edge, and a hatred for me over the years. So it was a game that I was looking forward to. First 15, 20 minutes of the game, I thought, wow, if we carry on like this, it could be 2-3-3-0. Johnson was, I think he was playing against Reece James on that side, and I think he was playing well. We scored that one goal where we played really good football, put it in. Son was just marginally offside, and then the commentators and everybody were like, the doggy challenge has kind of lit a flame, but I didn't see it that way. I was just, for me, a derby game. He put a tackle in. Okay, he was slightly high. Was he lucky to get away with not being sent off? Was that the catalyst for Chelsea to start playing and start coming into the game? I don't know. I still think if we had 11 players on the pitch, we would have comfortably won that game. But it wasn't meant to be. Romero, a few moments of madness, kicking out at Colville. I know he went down like he'd been shot, but he was, a bit of petulance there. And then literally 5 minutes later, he makes that challenge in the box. And it's funny that if potentially the Caicedo goal counted, that they wouldn't have gone back to that, and he potentially wouldn't have been sent off. So it's just, it was just so many different ifs and buts from that game. And then Udogie, you just knew. I think if we had potentially on the bench a Perisic or a Davies fit, maybe Ange could have or would have made that change to take him off, knowing that he's on a second yellow, like Poch took Colwill off to protect him. But we were a little light on that side. So young player, rash challenge, he put in second yellow deservedly, and I'm not complaining against any decisions that went all against us. It's just the way it was. Romero being the experienced world-class defender that everybody's saying that he is. You should. I know Oasis has got his reservations about Romero, and a few other people have, but we've been given the like captaincy role along with Son and Maddison. He seemed to be looked like he'd got his head screwed on and playing some really good stuff. But okay, we lost 4-1. I would rather have potentially lost that game 4-1, being down to 9 men, than losing it 2-1 by the odd goal. And even then, we had the Dia chance, and then Son had a chance, and then Bentancur had a chance. This was with 9 men. So, and then we were playing this high line, and people think it might be crazy. Some people might think, why didn't they sit off? But you know, I think against 9 men, a good Premier League side,
Yeah.
like Chelsea should be beating any team that's got 9 men.
But just on that,
Yeah.
On the high line, because it's got mixed reviews. Some people thought it was a decent strategy. Other people were really critical. What was your thoughts as a Spurs fan?
Honestly, watching it, I did think it was a bit suicidal, and I thought, why haven't Chelsea? And I thought at halftime, Pochettino, surely, like being the experienced manager that he is going to work this out like pretty quickly. Because we were doing it with 10 men, so I thought at halftime he's going to have a word and he's going to tell people, players like Sterling or Gallagher, to kind of drop off a bit and make that late run because we were so high up. If we had Van der Ven still on the pitch, maybe it might have been a little bit different with his pace. But we at one point we had Dier and Emerson Royal at centre halves, and we're playing this high line. Now, you know, that's the way Ange wants to set up and play. And for him, I think it's the closer you are to the opposition's half and box, the easier it is for you to then attack and, you know, potentially score a goal. Now, he said in his interview that even if we had 5 men, we'd still give it a crack. Now, in years gone by under other managers, as soon as we would have gone down to 10, it would have just capitulated. So just to see that,
Yeah.
you know, that fight, that desire, the will to stick to the plan that we had, I think that kind of gave the Spurs fans, and you know, I think Ange has built up a lot of credit in the bank for the opening 10 or so games. So, you know, we're not really going to go against his ideas, his philosophy, and the way we kind of set up, even though we had 9 men. But for me, that 5 minutes where we had the red card, penalty, and then the more important thing for me was Van der Ven going off injured, because he is integral to the way we have been playing and the way Ange wants us to play. And then Maddison went off with an injury, so it just looked like in 5 minutes, literally, our season had like started to crumble down. But it is what it is. These things happen. You've got to deal with them. And now let's see how Ange sets us up in the next game with some key players missing. That gives Ashley Phillips, potentially the lad we've signed from Rovers, a chance. I think he's in the mould of Van der Ven, but he's not quite like at Van der Ven's level, even though they're both young lads. So, you know, it's going to give Dier, Van der Ven, some of these other guys a chance now to come in and see what they can do. And with the international break after the Wolves game, I think it gives us that little bit of respite as well to potentially get some players back. But I think Van der Ven's looking like a bit of a long-term injury, which is, it's a shame for him and for Spurs, to be honest. So that was more gutting for me than the actual end result. So yeah, crazy game. It always is. Tottenham Chelsea. It's but we didn't expect that, did we?
No,
And I'd like to say though, Gary Neville makes everything sound 100 times worse than what it actually is. So I read something on Twitter. I don't know, it might be a conspiracy, but they were like, apparently Stockley Park can hear Gary Neville and his oohs and ahs and whether that's influencing them. But if that is the case, then that needs looking into. But yeah, I think Neville just makes everything sound like 100 times worse than what it is. So
just on that, because I want to ask you another question, but just because you mentioned Gary Neville, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that incident that led to the penalty and the red card for Romero, if you remember, as the incident develops and they are showing the replay to check whether Jackson, I don't think it was Jackson. Was it Jackson who was offside? But I think it was another player.
Yeah, Jackson was offside.
Jackson was offside.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Sorry. And when he was checking, when the replay was happening, there was some Gary Neville was talking about how, irrespective of whether the offside's given, that they're gonna go back and check this penalty. He mentions it a few times in the immediate aftermath. So you do raise a good question about whether or not Stockley Park can hear Gary Neville. I mean, whether or not they do, it's a moot point. I saw Dermot Gallagher absolutely raving on Ref Watch about the fact that the VAR room picked it up, and I thought to myself, well, anybody who saw the incident live would have noted that looked like something that they're definitely going to go back to when you see Enzo Fernandez lying on the floor, kind of writhing.
That's interesting, was because if the goal happened, would Romero have been spoken to, anything like that? Would they have just carried on with the game, or would they have would they have said to Michael Oliver that, hold on a minute, look at the Romero challenge, and then send him off as well? Like what?
I think it's a good question. I think if you're right, if it was a legitimate goal that happened in open play, I have a feeling that in theory it could still be given as a red card, because in theory violent conduct can occur on the ball, off the ball. So
I agree with you there.
So I think they would have gone back to it. What are your thoughts on that incident? I've got my own thoughts on Christian Romero and his style of defending.
Like you said, look, I'd be a hypocrite if I was to say that it's not a red or a penalty after what happened with Curtis Jones at Tottenham, because I came back into the office and I said to you guys, that's a red card all day long, regardless of whether he won the ball. He's endangered the player with his follow through, and like, people are like, oh, well, if you've played the game, then you kind of know that he's not meant that. But at the end of the day, he's made a tackle. Did he need to follow through like that on his international teammate as well? He didn't need to. So if you're giving Curtis Jones a red for against Spurs, then that's a red. And that is my issue with the referees. Now, this, for me, it looks like they're interpreting the rules differently every week. So like you said, that incident with Romero, if the goal went in, would they have gone back and looked at that? It's like if there's an offside decision, the players run through, and let's say the keeper's run out and taken him out, but because the linesman's put his flag up, does the referee just give the offside and carry on? Do you know what I mean? For me, violent conduct, whether the ball's in play, not in play, whether the decision's being given, is violent conduct. It doesn't matter. And I'm on the opinion of, if you make a tackle in the first 10 seconds and it's worthy of a card, it's worthy of a card. There's none of this, that's my first one.
Yeah.
That's if it's a bad tackle and it's a yellow card worthy tackle or a red card worthy tackle, you've got to make that decision. Then it doesn't matter how early or late in the game it is. You've got to take it on what has actually happened. Now, that's where I feel in football it's not as clear, because the referees interpret the rules differently. Like in rugby, in cricket, in other sports, you're pretty much seeing that the officials are pretty much aligned in every single game they're officiating. So that's where my issue lies here.
Yeah. Just on that, Ayub, though, I want to get your thoughts quickly, because when the game was transpiring, you were asked, weren't you, in terms of what your thoughts were on the red card on the forum that we're on. And obviously you felt quite strongly about the Curtis Jones incident. And I think the question put to you on Monday night was, you were arguing for Curtis Jones that was a very soft red card. How did you see the Romero incident? I think you did try to articulate in words. Do you want to just give us your thoughts? Because I do see a distinction between the two incidents, but I'll let you maybe just.
And I still stick to what I said or what I posted on that group. I mean, Moggy's talked about the incidents being quite similar. I think they're quite different. I mean, in terms of obviously the way that it looks, there's a similarity. But I think with Romero, there is a nasty streak in that. And I don't mean that as criticism. Sometimes as a defender, you have to have that element of sort of nastiness. I think Romero had an intention of hurting, or at least having an impact. Curtis Jones, I absolutely, as I said, I've not spoken to Curtis Jones, and I'm highly unlikely to, but I don't think he had any intention.
So you think that Romero had an intention of hurting his international teammate that he's going to be joining up with next week?
Remember, it's the heat of the moment. This is the thing.
That's what I'm saying. The heat of the moment.
No, but his intention was, it's like we've all played the game. Do you know when you leave a little bit? It's not, the intention isn't to seriously damage, but certainly the intention is to just leave a little bit. And I think his intention was to leave his calling card. He's a no-nonsense centre-back.
If he does that tackle with the side of his boot, like he's passing the ball, but he makes the tackle and then goes and kicks him on his shin with the side of his boot, then is that different?
Mine is purely, it's what I said before. There was an intent that he wanted to leave something on the player. Curtis Jones was purely an accident in terms of he's gone over the ball and he had no intention. I absolutely am convinced when Curtis Jones went for that challenge, his focus solely was the ball. And then there was it was the event led to his foot slipping over the ball led to contact. I think with Romero, the type of player he is, he he's quite an aggressive player. He's quite combative. He likes to put himself about, and I think his intention was, as I said, I won't sort of say it was serious damage, but certainly he wanted to let the defendant or let the opposition player know that he's around, he's in a battle. So that is the difference. It was certainly a red card. I still maintain that Curtis Jones wasn't a red card. I think it was yellow at worst, but Romero definitely. Definitely. Every single time I see that challenge, to me, it's straightforward. There is intent. And it's dangerous play. It definitely is dangerous play. Wes, your thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple of things from my side on that particular incident, because Moggy and I have discussed Christian Romero many a time regarding his style of defending, and I have called it selfish on a few occasions. And it's selfish because and this season, Moggy's right in terms of, he's you say he's been made one of the kind of group captains or the club captains and what have you, and you'd want him to take a leadership role. Obviously, won the World Cup with his country, so you think, right, settle down, because he's had a few moments, or quite a lot of moments, in a Spurs shirt where he has let his teammates down. Let's be very clear here. And the incident here, I think there's a couple of things that we just need to consider, right? First and foremost, it's his clearance or poor clearance that sets off the chain of events.
Yes.
Where Chelsea formed the attack. So I think there afterwards, he's in, let's say, a slightly impatient mood to try and win this ball and get this ball away. So there's that. So there's a little bit of ping pong that happens in the penalty box. I think the second thing is, Moggy, you're right, it's his Argentinian teammate. I'm not sure he realizes that, because the ball is bouncing around a little bit. So I don't think he's had the time. And I'm not saying he would, I don't think Christian Romero discriminates. So I think whether you're Argentinian or not Argentinian, I don't think it matters to him. You're getting battered, as you would say. But I think he's not had the time or the foresight as the ball's kind of bouncing around a little bit to kind of work out who it is. You're right. Maybe if you realise it was Enzo, he might have slightly withdrawn a little bit. Although he had a few things to say to Alexis McAllister after the 2-1 win earlier this season as well. So I don't think he's necessarily all about that. The only thing I would say about this one is, for me, intent's irrelevant to some extent. And what I mean by that is that if you're reckless in your actions, where a natural consequence of your action could be potentially endangering the opponent, intention doesn't matter. I always say this: if I'm driving 60 miles per hour outside of primary school, I don't intend to hurt any kids, but a natural consequence of me driving at 60 miles per hour outside of primary school is I might knock down a few kids. So it's still reckless behavior. And in the end, I question why he needed such a big wind up for a ball that was essentially a couple of yards away from him. So he's just got this slight, as you put it, I'm going to leave a little bit on him if I can get away with it within the rules of the game. So I think in that sense, the fact that he's followed through, it was actually more similar to, I think, the Mauro Gusto challenge when Chelsea had a player sent off, I think, against Aston Villa. I think that was a bit more similar in the sense of slightly more reckless. Again, I think it's his wind up that's then led to his foot following through on Fernandez's ankle, whereas Curtis Jones, I think, he's coming from a few yards away, similar to kind of Romero, but it's not the big wind-up. He's kind of stepping towards Bissouma, and then, as you articulated, his foot slightly gone over the ball. I do see him as different. I'm happy to listen to your arguments on Curtis Jones, but I actually thought the Romero one, honestly, was fairly obvious. And you're right, his reputation is going to precede him somewhat, and that's a reputation well forged by him, and that's and that's the way it goes. But just that's enough about the kind of the red card, the game. I mean, we've spoken about the highlight. You've got your thoughts. You didn't mind it so much, did you? But in terms of injuries and suspensions, Moggy, how do you see it? Because obviously there were a few injuries to come off the back of that game.
Yeah.
Couple of suspensions. Do you see that as being a bit of a hindrance? What's the news on Maddison?
Maddison, there's nothing come out as yet of him. He probably might make the team on Saturday, knowing that he could potentially pull out the England squad and have a couple of weeks rest. But we could replace him with Bentancur as he's come back. So it might be good for Bentancur to get a start and potentially have a rest after that as well, because I don't know whether he'll be called up for Uruguay so early on after his injury. We've got a list now which has 9 players on it, because Richarlison's just come out and said he's got a surgery to take place as well. So it's not looking good, as they say, and it's the key players. Like I mentioned before, Van der Ven, massive, because it's because of the way that we want to play and the way that we have that high line and his pace. I think it's going to be a massive loss for Spurs. Romero will be back in a few games after his suspension. Udogie will be back after the international break because he's got a 1-game suspension. Perisic is long term. Richarlison's going to have surgery. Solomon's out for a couple of months. So we've got a list that's looking like 8 or 9 players at the minute. So let's see now how this squad holds up. But I think the way we've started, the way Ange's got everybody together, I think it's got everybody's kind of buy-in. So sometimes when it comes to a situation like this, and you're bringing players in and they're knowing in the back of their head that, hold on a minute, I'm only coming in because X, Y, and Z is injured or suspended, and they'll come back in after, regardless of how well I play. I think that kind of thinking has gone out the window. So I'm feeling a little bit quietly confident of getting a result against Wolves, which will still keep us there or thereabouts on the weekend. If we don't, then we're going to get the whole, well, here we go, Spurs, the downfall started and blah blah blah. But let's wait and see. It was fun whilst it lasted, as I was telling people in the office. But if we lose only 1 game every quarter like we have now, then I'll be more than happy for the rest of the season, because first 10 games, 1 loss, second in the table. Other results went for us on the weekend as well, with Liverpool drawing to Luton. Ayub, a team that you've tipped for the title and a team that you've tipped for relegation. I know you've given your apologies to Luton now.
On bended knees.
Based on that. But results went our way as well, in terms of, us still staying second in the table. So, it's not all doom and gloom. Let's see how this Saturday pans out and what kind of team Ange puts out. And I don't see us being any different or playing any different than what we have done in the first 10 games, regardless of who comes in. So, yeah, I'm still happy with the way things are going. So
just on that, Mocky, I mean, we talked about Ange when he came. I mean, I had my reservations because I just don't think, certainly I didn't think he'd had the experience at the level that I think was needed to work in the Premier League. I mean, he's been absolutely amazing. What has been the secret? Because I mean, he's obviously brought in players. He's lost the big gun, Harold Kane. So what's he done? What magic has this man got? Because it appears to be that everybody is in the same direction.
There was a quote by Son, I think, earlier on or last week, saying that whenever Ange speaks, especially in the changing room pre-match, it makes Son's heart beat out of his chest, and it makes him want to.
Very dramatic.
Basically, whatever
he's always been over the top, Son.
Yeah, whatever he's saying and doing, the players, he has got the players fully 100% bought in, and I think they are all willing to run through. I know it's a cliche, but literally willing to run through brick walls for this guy. And Spurs had a team photo, like, well, obviously every team has a team photo, but there was a picture that got taken and it wasn't meant to be leaked. I think one of the members of staff that was in the photos kind of leaked it. Ange made sure that the kitchen staff, to the kit man, to the receptionist, to whoever is working at Tottenham Hotspur at the training ground and within the club, were all part of this team photo. And I think that ethos that he's brought in and changed the environment and just the way people are thinking in the club has, I think, just literally given everybody a boost. And like Son said, I think he's inspired them all to go out there, play a certain way, be a certain way. And like he said, whether we went down to 5 men, we still would have done the same thing and had a crack at trying to win the game. I spoke to a Celtic fan today at work, and he had nothing but admiration for Ange. He actually called him a godlike figure. And, you know, at Celtic, when he first came in, it was like the Australian guy, because I don't think he had the best of starts. But even after that, the Celtic fans and everybody's just bought into it. Even opposition fans who don't like Spurs and the way Spurs are, they can't help but just like Ange, the way he puts himself across in the media and just how he is. So, you know, if he's like that every day with the players in and around the club, with the staff, then it just creates for a happy place, happy players, going out, playing attacking football, and just giving it a go, basically. So I don't know the secret. If I knew the secret, I'd be a Premier League manager as well. But whatever he's doing, it's working, and Spurs fans are more than happy. Look, they got a standing ovation losing 4-1. Some might say that's loser mentality, but that wouldn't have happened previously at 2-3-1 down. People would have left the stadium. People are still staying behind, clapping the team off, knowing that everybody is going in the same direction, fighting for the same cause, trying to do the same thing. So that makes a massive difference when you've got, you know, the fans on board, players on board, everybody that are part of the club on board. So yeah, that's what I think he's basically done. He's just come in and changed the whole atmosphere and the way of thinking.
I think
go Noise.
No, I do want to answer the question. I also want to comment on the manager, because I think what you find here is that because he's such a 180 kind of degree difference to what they've had previously, especially the two previous managers, there is something in this where you have a coach that comes with a certain humility, but also quite a lot to prove himself. And I think there's something in that in terms of the psyche and personality, where that helps galvanize a club. Firstly, he comes across as a thoroughly decent person. I think that helps in terms of being a human being, in terms of that human touch that you need in around the place, in around the club. I think that's really important. Secondly, I think given the fact that it would appear, especially the manager that came before, and I'm talking about Antonio Conte, yes, proven winner, no doubt. I'm not going to question his credentials, but it's clear because he's won and he's won at the highest level, there's a certain, and I'm not even sure you can blame kind of the personality himself, because you think, well, what I'm doing works. When I go to these different clubs, it works. I win things. So why wouldn't I lean into that and make sure that everybody's trying to adhere to my methods and my tactics and my way of running a football club? I think what you have in, let's say, Ange Postecoglou is a lot of naysayers thinking, well, yeah, well, Celtic, I mean, you're going to win. Celtic's always winning SPL titles and what have you. So there's a certain kind of point to prove. And I think sometimes in a manager, I'm not saying always, you've got to get the right person, the right fit, the right psyche, but there is something in that, I think, where you then galvanize, because everybody at the club thinks to themselves, well, we're all part of one club, or we're all kind of fighting in the same direction. Whereas with Conte, it felt like he's trying to bring us along into his path. There was no real warmth, at least that I could see with the players, or at least the entire squad. And as Moggy says, I think Ange, just because, again, of the nature of the personality that he is, speaks well in interviews. He's funny. That famous soundbite with Joe Cole saying, "I'm just following Pep, mate," or copying Pep, mate. And there's a certain humor and a self-deprecating nature to him that I think people can resonate with. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they cope. And it just goes to show that when you're that type of personality and you can get the club, all fans, players, personnel, staff, everybody, kind of fighting in the right direction, even when you lose, it doesn't need to be the end of the world. They could lose to Wolves on Saturday. I still don't think there'll be any issues in terms of, oh, as Moggy said, here we go again. Yes, maybe from fans, because that's what fans do. But there's something about this manager that I think a lot of Spurs fans would like to kind of hold on to for a long time to come. Early days, yes, but it's just, I think there's something about his humanity that comes across in interviews, in press conferences, that you kind of like, even opposing fans like myself. So I was going to say, long may it continue. Let's not have it continue too much, but I think Spurs
generous words from an Arsenal fan. But I think you guys have cut it really, really well. I mean, there's a certain charisma to the man. And I watched an interview that he did with Gary Lineker, and it's he was a refugee. I think he came to, or he went to Australia when he was 5. He lived in a refugee camp as well. So he's had not the smoothest of upbringings, but I think he's somebody that perhaps has absorbed what's happened in his life, and he certainly presents himself incredibly well. And just another final point on the game. You can always tell how much a team is playing for the manager when they were at 9 men. So I mean, the way they were pushing, pressing, it was just it really was. I mean, I'm not a Spurs fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I couldn't help but be impressed by the commitment, the effort, and it's what Moggy was sort of saying, that they weren't just defending, they were looking for opportunities, and I mean, by the as Ian Smith would say, by the barest of margins, Eric Dier, if it had just held back, super finish, and Son as well. I mean, he could have put. I mean, I think it was still, was it level at the time when Son had the opportunity?
Yeah, they literally went and scored straight after that Son miss and just buried the game off. I know they were winning, I think 2-1. We would have made it 2 apiece, but then they went and basically killed it off after that. So yeah, look, I'm confident as a Spurs fan. I've not been able to say that for a long time because we're dominating games. Teams are sitting off us, letting us play, do our thing, and that's not happened for a long time watching Spurs. So it's always nice to be, you know, the dominant team when you're playing home or away. So long may it continue.
Are you a man of many talents? I didn't know that you could do a mean New Zealand accent as well, but okay. Add that to your many qualities.
Right. So I mean, it was a cracking. I mean, it thoroughly enjoyable. And talking about sort of dramatic games, it's sort of a nice little segue now. What we're going to talk about is our favourite or most dramatic 3 games each in the Premier League. So as Moggy is our guest, it would be rude to not let him go first. So Moggy, take it away from 3 to 1. Yeah. Okay. So what's your third most dramatic game that you've seen in the Premier League?
Premier League, yes.
So my 3, I've thought about this when you mentioned that this is what we're going to potentially be discussing on today's podcast. I was thinking about this and I thought, oof, there's been a lot of games that I've watched, but mine are going to come from 3 slightly different eras, you could potentially call it, of the Premier League going, and I'd be surprised if 1 or 2 of them aren't the same as you know, because for the viewers, myself and Uwais and Ayub have not discussed our top 3, just as a disclosure there. So I'm just as interested to hear Ayub and Uwais's top 3 as well. And just before we come on, I put it on one of our the lads group, the trust issues group that I've got. So a big shout out to the lads on trust issues. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why it's called trust issues.
Yeah,
but,
I'd rather not, thanks.
a big shout out to the lads on trust issues, and
he's got that in, hasn't he?
Yeah,
he's got that in.
It was they gave their, because I asked them about their most dramatic games that they've watched, and it was interesting to see what some of the lads on there had said as well. And there was so number 3, I will go with the Liverpool-Newcastle 4-3 1996. Stan Collymore with the winner at the end. There was a lot riding on that game as well. From my understanding, Liverpool was still in shout for the title. Newcastle were there. I think if Newcastle won that game, then that would have basically put Liverpool completely out. And that game had it all in terms of it wasn't like a team was 2-3-0 up. It was 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2.
Yeah.
You know, and so on. And then Collymore gets the winner. And then there was chances in between that as well for both teams, like literally end-to-end football. And as an advert for the Premier League back then, that was like the game. And you had players like Ginola, Ferdinand, Fowler,
Spreer,
yeah,
Barnsley
was on, Barnsley, you know, Ruddock, you had James in net. So, you know, you had all these you know, iconic Premier League players playing. And that game, it really, at that point when we were watching it, it was like, wow, that was like end to end. And then with it being a last minute winner as well, it just had it all. So I'll put that in at number number 3. At number 2, I'm going to go for the Battle of the Bridge. Now, for me, obviously, as a Spurs fan, that holds a lot of, bad memories. But as the game, Spurs were seen to be in with a shout of winning the Premier League, or at least putting pressure on Leicester. If we lost that game or drew that game, then that meant Leicester won the league. Jamie Vardy had all his boys around the house that night as well. It was live on Sky. Spurs under Pochettino, we went 2-0 up, cruising, and then it all just went to pot where challenges were flying in. Now, if we had VAR then, I think Spurs would have actually ended up with 5 players on the pitch. Like, I'm not even messing about, because some of the challenges that went flying in that game.
The game does get called off before that point. but
But
I take your point.
It's called Battle of the Bridge for a reason. And then with Clattenburg, who was the referee, coming out in the last couple of years saying that he basically wanted Spurs to kind of capitulate, hence why he didn't send players off when he should have done. There was a scuffle at halftime. Our manager had to run on the pitch at some point, and then being 2-0 up, giving a bit of hope to Spurs fans to think, look, we're still putting a bit of pressure on, and then Hazard kills it off for us at 2 apiece. And like I said, Spurs just lost their heads, and that game had it all for me. So the Battle of the Bridge comes in at number 2. And for me, the most iconic game I would put down is City QPR, Aguero, the commentary, what happened during the game, City being 1-0 up, then being 1-1, and then Barton getting sent off, and then QPR taking the lead with 10 men, United winning on the other end, the game finishing at United, they're thinking they've won the league. Dzeko gets a last-minute equaliser, and then we get the Aguero moment, the Balotelli pass into him, Aguero scores, takes his top off, and that Martin Tyler commentary will forever go down
Absolutely.
in history. So just everything that was lying, because I think United had finished their game, they were watching, or they were trying to hear out for it at the stadium, because I remember being at my brother-in-law's house, and it was like a split screen. I think we had the City game on in one room, and we had the United game had finished, and it was on the telly in the background in there. So just everything that you could want from a game on the last game of the season to being an actual title winning moment. I don't think you can basically ask for more for a sporting moment as a whole. That just had it all, and that's why we love football. We love the beautiful game. So that they are my top 3 craziest or most memorable games watching the Premier League.
Incredible. Good stuff.
But we'll leave that for another time. So I'm interested to see whether you guys have potentially got similar to me or different. Let's see.
You will let you go next.
Right.
Those are great picks, by the way.
Yeah, I was absolutely convinced that 2 of the picks that I had were going to be mentioned either by both of you or at least one of you, and you have the Newcastle Liverpool game. Absolutely amazing, absolutely brilliant. You've covered it, Moggy, so I don't need to really go into details, but I could still, it's almost as if when Collymore scored, the room that I was in, that was reverberating as well. It just sort of felt that it was such a monumental moment. The Aguero, absolutely. I was in Dewsbury, and I was with a cousin of mine, but there was sort of people in the house. There were some Manchester United supporters as well, and it's because I had no real horse in the race. It's amazing the emotions that the Manchester United fans felt, and you're absolutely right, Moggy, when they sort of went over to was it Old Trafford or wherever
they were? I think they were at the Stadium of Light.
All right,
Stadium of Light.
Yeah, it's Phil Jones for some reason. Phil Jones,
bless
his face. I always remember his face. So for me, it was the Aguero and Martin Tyler. I mean, he's by the end of his career, I mean, he was being criticised left, right, and centre. But at least he left us that moment, the Aguero moment, and it was amazing. It was such a dramatic game. Number 2 is the Newcastle Liverpool, and number 3. A little bit of self.
When you say number 3, so you've gone 1, 2, 3. Okay, just to clarify.
Yeah. So number 3, I've got it in this where number 3, and it's a little bit of self-indulgence because it includes or it's involves Leeds United, but there is a reason. There is a reason why.
This better be a Premier League game.
It was, yes, it was December 14, 1997, against Chelsea at the Bridge. It was Chelsea, I think, must have been second at the time. We were sort of, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th. But it was always, I mean, you talk about, Moggy, about Chelsea and Spurs, always been sort of great games and lots of feisty affairs. Same with Leeds and Chelsea. I mean, historically, you go way back. So it's always a feisty affair. And this was a real feisty affair. We had 2 men sent off in the first half. We had Gary Kelly and Alfred Inge Haaland, the father of Erling Haaland.
Leeds born.
Leeds born, yes. Well, not Alfie, but
but Erling.
Yeah. So in the first half, so it's 0-0 where Gary Kelly, I think, gets sent off in the 43rd minute. So and George Graham was the manager at the time. So come the second half at the Bridge against a rampant Chelsea side, we've got 9 players. We absolutely, again, this was a defensive masterclass. I mean,
you didn't play the high line.
No. We did no. It was. I mean, this was completely the opposite.
He did say it was George Graham.
yeah. No frills. This was no frills. This was sod. He was going to shoot anybody that went beyond the halfway line. So, but this was an unbelievable rearguard action against an exceptional. I think Ruud Gullit must have been, I think, the coach at the time, or he certainly was playing. And it was just amazing. I mean, I must confess that in terms of favourite games of mine that involved Leeds United, that's probably one, because it was everything that you would expect from your players. They gave it everything. They left nothing behind. So it can be done, Moggy. It can be done. You can. but that, to me, is, for me, it's as a Leeds fan, but I think even if you're a football fan and you watch that game, you would have actually doffed your cap at Georgie Graham and the Leeds player on the pitch. I mean, it was, and we had one opportunity. Bruno Ribeiro. Nobody's ever heard of him unless you're a Leeds fan, but he nearly scored.
Left-footed, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Portuguese guy. Yeah. So that, to me, is my third most dramatic game. So that's my 3. What about yours, Ois?
I googled the game, couldn't find it. Anyway, so
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
I made it up.
He's made
it up. Yeah, I was thinking something suspicious when he said Leeds held out with 9 men. I thought this has never happened.
Just in case, December 17th, 1997. I think. All right, look it up. Yeah.
Where were you at the time? Are you?
I was at home, or at least let me just say I was at home.
Is Bruno Ribeiro a real guy?
Yeah, sounds like an alias of some sort. No, he was a real player. True. I mean, I didn't want to interrupt Moggy, but we've got 2 of the similar ones. And are you, by the way, I'm glad that you chose that, because when we discussed this topic off the back of the events on Monday night, we said, look, it's got to be subjective to you in terms of not just dramatic but crazy, right? What was, in terms of how you consume the game. So the fact that you've chosen a Leeds game, A, comes as no surprise, but B, I'm grateful that you went that way.
I was thinking exactly the same there. That, obviously there's like the Battle of the Bridge for me.
Yeah.
For somebody else it might not be, but for me, that game, what it entailed, what happened, and then obviously for you as a Leeds fan, a game where they went down to 9 men. It's
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, exactly. And that's how we wanted to kind of tackle this. And I didn't want to interrupt you, Moggy, but I will offer some more commentary. I had Liverpool, the 4-3 Newcastle game, as third. Good that all three of us had that game. I think it is one of the most iconic games in the Premier League, isn't it? I was 10 years of age at the time. I think coming back from prayer, it was an evening game, but coming back from prayer at the local mosque, and apologies to the viewers for what no, but I was walking back on Alton Street. I think when Collymore scored the winner, but that was a big season, wasn't it? In terms of the context to that game, Moggy articulated it really well. Newcastle were 10 points ahead at Christmas, but they had a really difficult March. 1 win out of 4. They were headed into that game, so they were kind of under pressure. Had kind of given up that lead to Manchester United, who were hot on their heels, famously under, I guess, Alex Ferguson. And that game was just had everything. Liverpool went into that game with a lot of form, 6 wins out of 9, scored the most goals and conceded the least amount of goals during that little stretch. But it was just the game itself. Incredible. It's what Moggy's right. It's what makes you love the game. It's one of my earliest memories also of football. Probably not one of the earliest, but at least in terms of just, it was memorable because I can remember where I was, how I heard of obviously the Collymore goal. I wasn't watching the game at the time. But yeah, you mentioned Fowler, Ferdinand, Ginola made it 2-1. Fowler then equalises. Aspria then, if you remember, the goalkeeper coming out.
Oh yeah, just outside of his boot.
Outside of the boot.
Yeah,
and then you've got, indeed, and you've got Collymore scoring 3-3 from a McAtee across. And then Moggy's right, there's a lot of chances. And it was a critical game at that stage of the season in terms of perhaps deciding, and both were kind of still in with a shot of pushing United all the way. And then, yeah, the famous 1-2 rush Barnes picks out Collymore, takes actually quite a lovely first touch and adjusts his feet. Incredible goal, but you're right, it's more everything that comes with it. Collymore wheeling away, Kevin Keegan distraught on the sidelines, if you remember, hanging his head
down.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just again, it's what makes you.
Was that the season where he had the famous rant, or was
perhaps I'd love it. I'd love it. Indeed. But yeah, it's why we love to be on the positive side of said results, but we've also been on the kind of the other side of those results where it's just brutal, right? The agony, the ecstasy. So that's number 3, and I would be surprised if many didn't have that in their top 3. It's just so iconic. The second game, Moggy, you'll have to cover your ears, but this for me for a very different reason. I had the Spurs Manchester United game from the 29th of September 2001. Moggy, you know it. The 5-3 game when Manchester United came back.
One of my friends mentioned that on the group as well. Yeah, so
I had that number 2 for, again, I was looking at games that moved me or left an impression on me. And the reason why that game left such an impression on me is mainly the fact that Sir Alex Ferguson, 26 years at Manchester United, what do you think about first and foremost? You think about that never say die, kind of never give in. Comeback wins. He had 71 wins after conceding the first goal, 223 away wins in total. That game, no team since then, I hope this stat is still correct, but no team since then, at least away from home, has won a game after being 3-0 down after half time. And when I think about Manchester United during those 2 decades plus under Alex Ferguson, absolute dominance, 13 Premier League titles, I think about this, the fact that even in games where you're so shocked and surprised, Dean Richards scoring the first goal from a set piece, Moggy, that's a blast from the past.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, the late Dean Richards. Decent player as well, he was.
Absolutely, from Southampton. It was Southampton to Spurs, I think it was, wasn't it? If I remember correctly. Perhaps, yeah, definitely played for Southampton.
Was he Wolves player? I thought it wasn't.
Yeah, I'll have to double check. Southampton sticks in my mind for some reason, but maybe Wolves as well. But yeah, 1-0, second goal from Ferdinand, then Ziga at the far post. You remember the flying header coming in from the Gus Poyet cross. So you're 3-0 at half time. And I remember coming back, it was a Saturday afternoon, playing football with my friends. And obviously in those days, no smartphones, as they say. So you're coming in and you're putting on CFAX, BBC, and you find out on the radio, whatever it is, that it's 3-0 at half time. And I remember being so shocked and surprised. How can United, this is Manchester United, they don't lose games, never mind concede 3 in the first half away from home. And then the DNA of Manchester United coming to the fore, second half, comeback, obviously Cole, Blanc, equaliser from Van Nistelrooy, 4-3 Veron. You'll remember the touch from Solskjaer into him, left foot, bang, bottom corner, and then 5-3 David Beckham, right foot. He's not missing from there. It's just, it kind of was the most poignant reminder of what United were all about during those 2 decades. And I just remember thinking, this is what 20 years look like as a non-Manchester United supporter. They just always won, even from the kind of clutches of defeat, they would snatch victory. And that's what made, I guess, that team, especially that manager, so special. So I had that as number 2, just in terms of, like I said, how it moved me. And then obviously we all had the right game as number 1. It's the most iconic Premier League probably moment, I would say. A game as well, but probably moment in terms of Man City against QPR. You're right. Moggy's first comment on the game was the commentary, and that's what you think about when it comes to the commentary. And I will come on to that, and I want to just say it, because it just, even now when watching it earlier on, it just brings chills to you, because it takes you back. You remember you were in Dewsbury, Moggy, you remember the fact that kind of, the screens were split and who you were watching it with and all the rest of it. But obviously, we think about City now as the juggernaut, but going back a decade, obviously they were still going for their first Premier League title. They'd won the FA Cup the year before, knocked out United in the process in the semi-finals. And if you remember famously, Ferguson's talking about Man City, the noisy neighbours. And when challenged about City when asked about City challenging United for supremacy, he famously said, "Not in my lifetime." Well, he was wrong about that. So I think we could put that one to bed. But this is what it was, wasn't it? It was City knocking on the door, making themselves relevant. They beat United 6-1 earlier that season, the famous game. That could have made it if we were talking about momentous games. And then, just the way the whole game transpired, the consequences of what was happening at Sunderland. Obviously, they had consequences for QPR, who were still fighting and battling relegation with another team. I think it was Burnley. I'll have to double check that. But it's just the whole way that game transpired. And I have to slightly take you into the room, which I will, where I was, because there's a slightly kind of funny little moment there as well. But I watched the game at a friend's house on St. James's Road, and I was watching it.
He's just name dropping roads in Blackburn.
No. I think
St. James's Road.
Some of our viewers will be thinking St. James's Road was one of that. I was watching in Newcastle.
And Moggy's mentioning sort of various group, the trust group. What the hell's going on?
Trust issues.
Trust issues. Yeah, exactly. But no, just in terms of, obviously, Moggy's articulated it, but I'll take you through from 2-1. It's 2-1, and you're watching it. And I was watching it again. There were 5 of us in the room, me and my brother, because we were still fighting it out over the private league in fantasy football. So we thought, let's watch the final game of the season together, because we were both fighting it out first and second in private league. And we were joined by 2 other United friends, who one of you, all 3 of us know very well. I won't name drop him for the sheer shame of it. And another United fan. Anyway, it's 2-1. And as we enter injury time, one of the United fans turns around to all of us in the room, and there's 5 of us in the room. So me and my brother, 2 United fans, and the gentleman hosting us, the friend hosting us. And he turns around and he says, and he's feeling good about himself, right? Let's not forget, United have won the game, or they're about to win. I think full time's about to blow. Rooney scored against Sunderland. They needed to win, obviously, to keep their kind of hopes alive. And he turns around to all of us in the room, and I still remember, and he says, "That Noel Gallagher, he's been doing the rounds on the TV recently. Oh, wait, I just can't wait to go in on him. Just watch. Oh, I'm not going to jinx it. But just watch." And he's getting himself in a bit of a state. Anyway, we think nothing of it, because both of us, me and my brother, were rooting for Man City. Let's be very clear. Anyway, the 2-2 goal happens, and all of a sudden there's a little bit of nervousness in the room. And even I'm turning around to my brother, and normally I'm trying to be very respectful. You're watching it with some United fans, they've got a vested interest, so you're trying to stay respectful. And I remember turning to him, and I just said to him, do you reckon there's enough time? And he's like shaking his head thinking, no chance. Anyway, obviously 2-2 happens, and then when the moment happens, and I'm going to read out the commentary, because the commentary is incredible. Aguero scores 93 minutes 20 seconds. No Man City fan will ever forget that minute, but he talks about it. Rooney's goal was enough for those 3 points. Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero, and it's Balotelli's one and only Premier League assist. But what an assist for the Aguero goal. And it's just as pandemonium. You see Joe Hart running around, incredible. Colo Torres still waiting for that hug from Roberto Mancini, if you remember, famously on the byline. But he talks about where he says, "I swear you'll never see anything like this again. So watch it, drink it in." It's just incredible, just in terms of, that was, as you said, Martin Tyler in his absolute pomp. But he finishes it off with stupendous, and it's just incredible. Niall Quinn's on co-commentary. And I think that's what we all love about the game. Again, that agony, the ecstasy, the feeling. You talked about the face of Phil Jones. There's the lady in the red jumper at Sunderland as well, United fan. She hears something on radio that City might have scored. So it's just absolutely incredible. And just to finish off the story, so when the 3-2 goal goes in and we're in the room, again, normally I'm so reserved, but me and my brother are actually rolling around on the floor, hugging one another and everything. And the two guys, United fans, are absolutely distraught. And like I said, all three of us know one of the gentlemen. I won't name him. And he turns around to the gentleman, to his other United fan, and he says, in our native language, but I'll say in English, and he's like, "What's happened here? I just rang my wife as well just to put Match of the Day on record as well." So it's just like, you knew he just had to jinx it. But no, honestly, just an incredible feeling. We all remember where we were, how we felt, that we couldn't wait to kind of speak about the game with our friends and social media and all the rest of it. But it would take some doing, I think, to top that Premier League moment. I can't see it again in my lifetime, but what an incredible moment, and such a critical point for Manchester City because of what's come there afterwards. Yes, United won the title the year after, but it's definitely been Manchester City's decade. So yeah, that would be the number one, and nobody else is going to have anything else number one, surely.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think you guys have covered it absolutely beautifully. It is. It's the most iconic moment, and I think, Moggy, you're absolutely right. I think the commentary just enhanced it. I think even without the commentary, obviously it would have been a magical moment, but just Martin Tyler at his absolute finest. And I think it is. I mean, it's not the easiest job to be a really good commentator.
The fact that he said, "I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again."
Yeah.
So drinking in. That was just even more iconic than when he just screamed Aguero's name for like what sounded like 25 minutes. But yeah, that line, it'll just always be.
And I think when we think about what it must feel like to be a professional footballer, that's the moment I often think about. Like that moment. Like imagine you're a player, striker, Argentinian, you've come from abroad, you're obviously a hot prospect and you've done really well at Atletico Madrid, you come to City and you deliver a title. In that moment, riding the challenge, near post, bang, stadium erupts. As in that one moment, I just think that must be the most incredible feeling as a sportsman to deliver a title in that kind of fashion, in kind of last chance saloon, with so much. And then imagine, Moggy spoke about how people might comment with Spurs if they lose the second game now. Can you imagine what some of the commentary and reaction would have been if Manchester City had failed to win the title that season? So yeah, just incredible.
Absolutely fantastic. It's a really good suggestion of yours, OS, because it's been wonderful just going down memory lane, and it really is good to hear each of our thoughts, and especially when it's always, you're always right. It's sometimes you go back to, I suppose, where you were, and it always makes it much more magical. So absolutely fantastic, really enjoyable. As always, a pleasure.
I was going to say, suffice to say, Noel Gallagher didn't get that tongue lashing from my friends. Let's just say.
But let's. I think it's been a fabulous show. Really enjoyed it. But it's time to call it a day. But let me do the housekeeping. Right. Because Moggy is on. Last time when we had Moggy on, we got enormous amounts of traction. We had, I think, I don't know, in terms of sort of YouTube views, it's still quite minuscule. But we had, I think, 700, 800. What I want now is for everyone who obviously loves and respects and likes Moggy to smash a like. All right, so we'll see how many likes we get.
What are you saying about the two of us? Are you?
We're getting nothing. We're getting nothing. This is the man who's going to get the likes. All right, so smash a like, subscribe if you haven't, and if there's 700 last time that watched, then obviously there's a lot who have not subscribed. So please, there's somewhere here is a subscribe button. So not obviously that one, because that doesn't work, but just press the subscribe, share with your friends. And all that good stuff. All right, okay. I mean, we've got a Twitter account or an X account. Subscribe to that as well, because it's wonderful. It's really well run by young Adam. Okay, so OS, as always, it's a pleasure to have you. Moggy, fantastic as always. Really enjoyable, great content. And on that note, I was going to say, don't stray off.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.